In the last video, what we looked at is the reports workspace. So as you enter this workspace, you're taken into a report snapshot report, which is a bit of an overview, a secondary landing page, very similar to the home workspace or the home page. We also had a look at the real-time reports, as well as those two subsections which are collapsible in the reports menu. Those two sections are what we're going to look at today in this video. I mentioned on the last video, but it's worth mentioning again, that if you don't see what I'm seeing exactly, don't worry. This is something we're going to come back to in Module 4 when we talk about customizing this workspace, and actually where we can change all the reports, the metrics, and everything else that we see. But for now, I'm using the vanilla default version of Google Analytics. Let's see what we have available. The first thing we need to mention is the fact that we have two types of reports in GA4. We have our overview reports and our detail reports. And often what you'll find as we browse through the reports workspace is that in each of these subsections, you'll find at least one detail report, and we'll always have an overview report too. For example, if we have a look under the user section in the menu, we'll find we have two subsections, demographics and tech. If I open up each of these, you'll see that there's demographics overview and demographics detail, and there's tech overview and tech detail. Going into the tech overview, for example, we'll see that this is another type of landing page or another type of dashboard of sorts. And this time the scope has been narrowed down to the section that I'm in. So looking at the tech overview, this will give us information around things like the browser, operating system, device category, and even things like screen resolution. But you'll notice that there's blue links under the majority of each of these widgets. And what these will do is these will link off to the detail reports. And so we have two ways of accessing the detail reports. Firstly, we can click on these blue links from the overview reports, or we can go directly into the detail report by selecting it in the left-hand navigation. So if I select the tech detail report from the left-hand navigation, it takes us into the detail report itself, and you'll notice that it looks slightly different. So every detail report will have at least one chart at the top of the page. There can be more than one, there can be two. They can be bar charts, scatter charts, or line charts. It depends on the type of report you're in and what Google defaults it to. But here you can see I've got a line chart and a bar chart. But most importantly, below this, we have a data table. And this is why we're here. This is the majority of the reasons why we come into Google Analytics. And this is to get into the detail. This is to get specific numbers out of Google Analytics. Looking on the left-hand side of this table, we have something called a dimension. And this is the primary dimension. And what you can see here is that it's defaulted to browser. But if you look on the left-hand side in the menu, we're in the tech detail report. But if you look at the top of the screen, the name of this report is tech details : browser. And that's deliberate. Rather than having 100 different reports for every different variation of the dataset there is available, Google Analytics 4 gives us one report, in this case the tech details report, and enables us to have a look at all sorts of different data within this one single report. The way that we do that is if we go down and have a look at that primary dimension in the data table, there's a small drop-down arrow next to it where I can use that to change that primary dimension for a different dimension. For example, device category. Once I've changed that, you'll notice that I haven't left the tech details report, but if I have a look at the top of the screen, I'm in the tech details : device category report now. Everything else stays the same. The only thing that's different is that primary dimension. For example, if I go into a completely different detail report and go into the demographics detail report, you'll see it looks very similar, in actual fact, quite identical to the previous one we were just in. But if I scroll down, you'll notice the primary dimension is defaulted to country. And I can use that same method again of using that drop down to change the primary dimension for something different, but we don't always have to keep swapping it out. We do have a way of adding it in side by side. And this process is called adding in a secondary dimension. Adding in a secondary dimension is actually relatively straightforward. We can use the small blue plus icon next to the primary dimension and browse through the list of dimensions and select the one we want. For example, we're looking at countries, so let's add region. So now I have those two dimensions side by side. And now let's take a look at the right-hand side of the table. The right-hand side of the table is what we call our metrics. These metrics will vary depending on the report that we're in, just like the dimension does. But we can see here that Google has provided a variety of different numbers for us to have a look at and measure our dimensions with. Some of these will be currency-based, some of them will be percentages, some of them integers, some of them decimals. It depends on the number itself. If you notice anything with a dotted line underneath, that means there's a tooltip available. So if you have any questions around what these metrics are reporting, what they mean or how they're defined, hover over any one of them and often it will link off to a support page or some other documentation going into a bit more detail. That's it for this video. Join us on the next one when I go into changing things like date ranges, adding filters and comparisons. But until then, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next one.